Montana Territory, August 1879. The dust kicked up hard across the open plain. But Malcolm Hargrove reined in his horse fast when he spotted someone lying crumpled near the wagon trail, a small figure, dress torn, hair tangled, skin dirt smudged. Not moving. He swung down before the mare had fully stopped, boots hitting the ground hard. "Ma'am?" he called, crouching low, heart already thudding. "Hey, can you hear me?" She stirred, just barely. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes fluttered open green, sharp even through the haze of pain. Then her gaze landed on him, wild with fear. "I ain't gonna hurt you," Malcolm said quickly, hands raised. "You're safe now." He slid one arm beneath her shoulders, the other under her knees, and lifted her gently. She was light, too light. Dust clung to her skin like a second coat. Her forehead had a cut, blood dried and crusted. She blinked again, trying to speak, but only managed one word. "Children." Malcolm stiffened. "What children?" Her fingers clutched weakly at his shirt. "Mine, too, back there. Please." He looked around, pulse hammering. No broken wagon, no sign of others. Just the wide, empty prairie stretching out under the dying sun. "Where?" She raised a trembling hand toward the east. "Oaks, near the creek." "I'll find them, but you need water first." He laid her near his saddlebags, uncorked his canteen, and helped her drink. Her name came out in a whisper after the first few swallows. "Gwen. Gwen Whitlow." "Malcolm Hargrove," he said, voice low. "Rest here. I'll be back." Took him 20 minutes to find the creek. The sun had dipped lower, shadows growing long. Then he saw them, two children huddled together beneath the trees. A boy and a girl, maybe 4 and 6. Their faces lit with fear when he stepped out from the brush. "Easy," Malcolm said. "Your ma sent me." The little boy stepped in front of the girl, jaw tight, fists balled. "Where is she?" "Safe. I found her. She's hurt, but she'll be all right." The girl started crying then, soft and shaking. Malcolm crouched down and held out his hand. "Come on. Let's get you to her." The boy hesitated, then nodded. "I'm Jesse. She's June." "All right, Jesse. Let's go." He carried June and kept Jesse close, all three silent on the walk back. When Gwen saw them, she cried without sound, arms reaching. The children rushed into her hold, and Malcolm looked away, giving them the moment. But something tugged in his chest, something he had not felt in years. Later, after a small fire was going and the children were curled around their mother, Malcolm sat nearby, sharpening his knife slowly. "What happened?" he asked, glancing at her. Gwen's voice was quiet, but steady. "We were heading to Fort Benton. My husband died last winter. Pneumonia. I thought I could make it to my cousin's with the wagon. But we got robbed 3 days back. They took everything. Wagon, mule. Left us to die." Malcolm's jaw tightened. "You walked this far?" "Carried them most of the day. Then I passed out." Her eyes lifted to his. "Thank you. You saved us." He nodded once. "You need a place. You cannot stay out here." "I know, but I got nowhere else. My cousin's farm is still days away, and I barely know her. I've got a small cabin, about half a day's ride west. You and the kids can rest there, figure out next steps." She looked at her children, then at him. "You sure?" "I would not offer if I were not." Malcolm kept his distance that night, sleeping near the horses. But he barely slept. He kept thinking of her face when the children ran to her. The way her voice cracked when she said her name. The strength it must have taken to carry 2 children through dry land, alone. When morning came, he helped Gwen into the saddle, lifted the children behind him, and rode slow and careful. The cabin sat tucked near the edge of a ridge, nothing fancy, one room, stone fireplace, a narrow bed, and a cot. He brought them inside and built up the fire. "You can stay as long as you need," he said, placing a pan over the flames. "I know what it is to lose everything." She looked at him, something unreadable in her eyes. "You got family?" "Had a wife. Long time ago. She died birthing our son." He paused. "He did not make it either." Gwen's voice softened. "I am sorry." "Me too." They did not talk much that day. Gwen slept most of it, the children clinging close. Malcolm kept watch, chopped wood, tended the fire. By evening, everyone had eaten and was quiet. June fell asleep curled against her mother. Jessie stared into the flames. "Are you a cowboy?" the boy asked. "No," Malcolm said. "Just a man who moves a lot." "Why?" He glanced at Gwen. She was watching him, eyes steady. "No place ever felt like mine." Jessie nodded like he understood, then turned and lay down. Silence settled again. Later that night, Gwen stepped outside where Malcolm stood staring at the stars. "You saved my life," she said. "I just did what anyone should." "No. You did more. You stayed." He looked at her, really looked. Her hair was brushed now, her skin washed. There were still shadows under her eyes, but she looked stronger, braver. "You are not what I expected," she said quietly. "Neither are you." She stepped closer. Her hand brushed his arm. "I do not know what comes next." "Me neither," he said. "But you are not alone anymore." She smiled then, soft, real, and Malcolm felt it like something in him clicked back into place. He had not come here looking for anything, but he had found something anyway. Her. The sun came up pale and cold over the ridge, washing the prairie in light the color of tin. Malcolm had been up since the first tug of gray in the sky, splitting kindling behind the cabin with careful strokes of his hatchet. He paused when he heard the door creak open and turned to see Gwen stepping outside, blanket draped around her shoulders, hair braided back. "You sleep?" he asked, wiping his hands on his trouser leg. "Some," she replied, voice low from the morning air. June had a bad dream, but she settled again. "Jessie's still asleep." She stepped off the stoop, boots crunching in the frost-hardened grass. Her eyes scanned the horizon like she was memorizing it. "You expecting someone?" she asked. "No," Malcolm said. "Just used to watching the line." They stood quiet for a while. A meadowlark called from one of the fence posts, bright against the hush. "You built this place yourself?" she asked, nodding toward the cabin. "Mostly. It was a trapper's shelter before. I added the stone chimney and put in the window." She glanced back at the cabin. "It's sturdy. Kept out the wind last night. I've patched it enough times." Gwen looked at him more directly now. "You stay out here by choice?" "I tried towns. Too many voices. Too many people asking questions they don't want real answers to." She pulled the blanket tighter. "I used to think places like this were empty. But they're not, are they? There's just more space between things. That's the truth of it." A woodpecker started tapping in the trees nearby, steady and unbothered. Gwen shifted her weight and looked down. "I found my wedding ring in my pocket this morning," she said. "I thought it was gone. I don't know why I kept it there. Maybe I didn't want to look at my hand and be reminded." Malcolm didn't answer right away. He picked up another piece of wood and set it on the block. "You don't owe him less just 'cause you're still breathing." "I know," she said, "but I don't know where that leaves me." "Someplace new," he said. "Doesn't mean you forget. Just means you're still walking." She was quiet at that, and when she spoke again it was softer. "You talk like you've thought through these things." "I've had time," he said, and split the kindling in 2 clean strokes. Later, while the children ate the last of the cornbread from the tin, Gwen went with Malcolm to check the snares he'd set along the ridge. The trail wound through low brush and white-barked cottonwoods, the kind that cracked in the wind. She kept pace beside him, her steps careful over the uneven terrain. "You always trap the same runs?" she asked. "Only ones that haven't been picked over. Coyotes are clever." They reached the last snare and found a rabbit caught clean around the hind leg. Malcolm knelt, worked the wire loose with practiced quiet, then twisted the animal's neck quick and merciful. Gwen didn't flinch. "You've done this before," he said, standing. "My father kept traps near the river back home. I helped him dress game when I was little." He glanced sideways at her. "You speak like you grew up east of the Mississippi." "Southern Missouri," she said. "Came west when I married." "What was he like?" "Kind," she said simply. "Had a laugh like creek water spilling over stone." He never raised his hand. They walked a while longer. Malcolm didn't ask more. When they came back over the rise and the cabin came into view, smoke curling from the chimney, Gwen stopped. "I keep thinking this is a pause," she said. "That any moment, I'll have to pick everything up again and keep moving." "You don't," Malcolm said. "Not unless you want to." She turned toward him, and he saw it then, not just weariness, but a flicker of something else. Something beginning. "I don't know what I want yet." "That's allowed." Her eyes searched his face. "You speak quiet, but you see a lot. I've had years to practice." The wind picked up, tugging at her braid. She didn't step away. "I think I'd like to stay a little longer," she said. He nodded. "Then you should." They walked the last stretch back together, silent again. But something had shifted. Not spoken, not promised. Just a widening of space between what had been and what might come. By the third morning, Jessie had taken to following Malcolm out to the lean to where he kept his tools. Gwen watched from the doorway as her son crouched beside him, small hands gripping a rail of the fence while Malcolm checked the tension of a wire. June stayed close to Gwen's skirts, still wary of too much distance, but less so than before. The girl now slept through the night, her breath steady beside her mother's. Gwen poured the last of the coffee into a tin cup and stepped outside, the chill already softening under the sun. She walked past the row of stacked firewood and stopped near the fence, watching as Malcolm showed Jessie how to fit a nail into the gate hinge. The boy didn't speak much, but his eyes were sharp on the man's movements. "He doesn't usually take to strangers," Gwen said. Malcolm kept his focus on the hinge. "He's watching close, wants to do things right." "He gets that from his father," she said. "Ben didn't believe in doing things halfway." Malcolm stood, brushing sawdust from his hands. "He raise you on a farm?" "Blacksmith shop," Gwen said. "He apprenticed under my uncle until we left Missouri. Kept a forge in every town we passed through. Even in winter, he'd find work." "You worked it too?" "I helped with the books. Managed trade. Sometimes I'd shoe the pack mule if he was laid up. I didn't mind the heat." Malcolm leaned against the split-post fence, arms folded. "You miss it." "I miss the rhythm," Gwen said. "The knowing what comes next. There's a quiet in labor that I haven't found again." He nodded once, then turned to Jessie. "You want to try?" Jessie's face lit with a flicker of pride. "Yes, sir." Malcolm handed him the hammer, letting the boy feel the weight. Gwen stepped back as the two bent down again, the boy mimicking Malcolm's grip. Later, while Jessie and June napped on the cot, Gwen sat by the hearth finishing the stitching on one of Jessie's torn shirts. Malcolm sat at the table, whittling a length of pine into a smooth, tapered rod. "They'll outgrow everything I brought within the month," Gwen said, threading the needle again. "I'll need to find fabric soon. There's a trader sets up 2 valleys over. He passes through every 3rd week, barters for hides or jerky. Might have cloth." "I can make a trade," she said. I've still got the silver comb from my wedding chest. It's fine work. You sure? Malcolm asked without looking up. I won't wear it again, she said. It's better used than stored. She finished the seam and tied it off. The lamplight caught the curve of her cheek as she leaned forward, folding the shirt into a neat square. He watched her hands. How deliberate they were. Always in motion, always doing. You've been quiet since supper, she said. I've been thinking. About. It's not often I have company that doesn't expect to leave by morning. She set the shirt aside and looked at him. Do you want us gone? No, he said. I'm trying to figure what it means that I don't. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uneasy. Gwen reached for the kettle and poured the last of the hot water into 2 cups. I never thought I'd feel safe again, she said. Not really, but this place. It's different. He took the cup she offered, fingers brushing hers. You're different. She didn't pull away. The fire popped and settled behind them. Her voice dropped. You've given us more than shelter. I know you didn't plan for that. I didn't plan for any of this, he said. But I'd still do it again. She looked at him full then, no hesitation. I believe you. Malcolm set the cup down, slow and steady. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. I lost everything once, he said. After that, I stopped letting people get close. Figured it was safer. I know that way of thinking, she said. But it doesn't hold. Not forever. No, he said. It doesn't. The lantern dimmed as the oil burned low. Outside, the coyotes called to one another across the open dark. Inside, the quiet held, but it held something new. Not just survival. Not just patience. Something beginning. Malcolm leaned back, eyes still on her. If you wanted to stay longer, he said. Not just for the children's sake. I wouldn't mind it. Gwen didn't answer right away. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the moonlit ridge. Then she turned back, her face clear. I don't want to keep moving anymore, she said. And I don't want to pretend I don't see what's building here. He stood, slow, careful. He didn't reach for her. But when she stepped forward, he didn't move away. She touched his chest, just over the stitching of his shirt. You saw me in the dust, she said. And you lifted me up. I didn't know it'd lead here. But I'm glad it did. His voice came quiet. So am I. And there, by firelight and the hush of sleeping children, the weight of the past finally gave way to something steadier than grief. Something that could last. The snow came early that year, a thin veil dusting the prairie like sifted flour over hard ground. By the end of September, the wind carried the bite of winter, and Malcolm had taken to checking the roof at first light, pressing his palm against the boards for damp. One morning, after securing the window shutters, he came inside to find Gwen kneeling beside the hearth, feeding kindling to the coals. Her hair was pinned up the way she wore it when baking, tight, practical, and streaked with flour. I started the bread, she said, not looking up. I found a sack of rye in the back corner of the pantry. I'd forgot about that, Malcolm said, shrugging out of his coat. Was saving it for lean months. She straightened, wiping her hands on a cloth. They're here. The kettle hissed on the stove. He poured water into the basin and washed his hands, watching the way her shoulders moved as she rolled the dough. She'd taken over the rhythm of the place without asking, patching curtains, organizing the root cellar, brushing the children's hair in the mornings with quiet attention. It hadn't been spoken aloud, but the cabin no longer felt like his alone. He dried his hands and leaned against the wall. I've been thinking about the barn. She paused, one hand resting on the dough. What about it? If we cleared the back stall, we could keep a milk cow come spring. Trade for one, maybe from the Merkel place downriver. She nodded slowly. That'd be good. We'd have cream, butter. Jesse could learn to handle her. He stepped forward, close enough to smell the smoke in her clothes. I was wondering if you'd want to stay through the winter, not just until the snow melts. Her eyes lifted to his, steady. I was already planning to. He reached for her hand, still dusted with flour, and held it between his. I want to do this right, Gwen. I know, she said. I do too. They didn't say anything else. He kissed her knuckles, then let her return to the dough. That Sunday, they hitched the mare to the cart and rode down to the chapel that stood crooked on the edge of the cottonwoods, 5 miles south. Reverend Pike met them at the door, his coat patched at the elbows, boots scuffed with years of dust. The man had baptized both his daughters along the Milk River, and now he stood with Malcolm and Gwen in the small wooden room, the children sitting quiet on the front bench. We don't have rings, Gwen said. You have hands to hold, the Reverend replied. That's enough for God. They spoke the words simply without flourish. No one wept. No one sang. Jesse held June's hand, and the sun came through the warped glass like poured honey. After the vows, Malcolm touched Gwen's cheek, and she leaned into it, eyes closed for the length of one breath. The ride home was quiet. Gwen held June on her lap. Jesse sat beside Malcolm, legs swinging. The land stretched wide all around, patched with dry grass and early frost. When they reached the cabin, Gwen stepped down first and turned back toward Malcolm. What now? She asked. Now we live. That evening, he whittled a small horse for Jesse, carving the ears with careful cuts while Gwen read aloud from a worn almanac she'd found tucked behind a beam. June fell asleep on the rug, cheek against her mother's foot. Gwen closed the book and set it aside. She'll outgrow my lap soon. She'll always find her way back to it, Malcolm said. Gwen reached across the table and touched his wrist. You make this feel like a place to grow old in. He turned his hand to hold hers. That's all I ever wanted. Outside, the snow began again, soft and sure, covering the prairie without sound. Inside, the fire held steady, and the 4 of them sat together, not as survivors, but as something stronger. Family. The first frost didn't frighten the garden, but the second one did. The few late carrots Gwen had coaxed from the dry soil turned limp overnight, tops blackened, roots softening in the ground. She knelt beside the row with a basket at her hip, cutting away what she could save. The cold had settled across the land like truth, quiet, final, and without apology. Inside, Malcolm was oiling the hinges on the door to the cellar. The trapdoor had swollen in the night air, and he wanted it to open smooth before the snow came heavy. Gwen stepped in, arms full of greens and the last of the beans. Her cheeks were ruddy from the wind. She set the basket near the table and pulled off her gloves. I think we'll need to dry the rest, she said. There's not enough daylight left to cook through all of it. Malcolm stood, wiping his hands on a cloth. I'll hang a line above the stove. As he reached for the hammer, Gwen watched him for a moment, then crossed the room. I want to take the children to that rise above the creek, she said. The one with the tall grass, before the snow gets too deep. They'd like that, he said, fitting the nail between his fingers. I thought we could bring bread. Sit a while. Jesse's been carving a walking stick from a willow branch. He says he wants to see how far it'll take him. You want me to come? She touched his arm. I don't want to go without you. He looked at her hand, then up into her face clear-eyed, without hesitation. Then I'll be there. They made the climb the next morning. June rode on Gwen's back, arms tucked under her mother's shawl, while Jesse led the way, his stick thudding softly against the ground. When they reached the ridge, the land opened wide, stretching out in shades of gold and ash and the soft blue of distant hills. Malcolm spread the blanket, and they sat together, passing pieces of bread and dried apple between them. Gwen leaned back on her elbows and watched Jessie chase a grasshopper through the tall stalks. "I used to think the world ended past the river behind our house," she said. "Now I can't see where it ends at all." Malcolm lay beside her, one hand behind his head. "You miss Missouri? I miss knowing where folks came from. Around here, it's like everyone's still deciding who they are." He turned toward her. "And you? I think I'm finally settling into someone I recognize." She didn't turn away when his hand found hers. June had fallen asleep, curled beside them with her thumb tucked under her chin. Jessie stood at the edge of the slope, wind tugging his coat, eyes scanning the valley like he was memorizing it. That night, after the children were asleep, Gwen lit the oil lamp and sat at the table, a small book open before her. Malcolm was carving a handle for the door latch, blade working slow and deliberate. "I wrote to my mother," Gwen said. He glanced up. "Hadn't heard you mention her. I didn't know what to say until now. She won't expect a reply. But I wanted her to know we're safe. That I've found something good." He set the carving aside. "You want her to visit?" "No," she said. "She's not the visiting kind. But I wanted her to know the children are laughing again." Malcolm rose and came to stand behind her. He rested his hands lightly on her shoulders. "You tell her about me?" She looked up at him, smile quiet. "I told her I married a man who listens more than he speaks, who gives more than he takes." He bent low, brushing a kiss against her temple. "You didn't have to lie." "I didn't." The weeks grew colder. Malcolm reinforced the windows with strips of burlap dipped in wax. Gwen patched a quilt until her fingers ached. Jessie learned to split kindling without missing, and June began humming to herself as she played. They moved as a kind of rhythm now, the four of them a pattern shaped by care, not necessity. On the night the first real snow fell, Gwen stood at the doorway, watching it drift down in thick, slow flakes. The cabin glowed behind her, warm and steady. Malcolm came up beside her, wrapping a shawl over her shoulders. "I never liked snow," she said. But now I have something to watch it fall on." He didn't answer. He just held her, both of them still as the snow built up on the roof above. By late December, the days shortened to their bones. But the cabin was full of sound, of breath, of the quiet comfort that only comes when no one is waiting for the other shoe to drop. On Christmas morning, Gwen opened her eyes to find Malcolm already dressing. He'd lit the fire and stoked it hot. She sat up, blankets falling to her waist. "You're up early," she murmured. "Wanted to check the trapline before the sun hits it. Might be fresh tracks in the snow." She stood, wrapped the shawl around herself and crossed the room. He turned just as she reached him, and she slipped her arms around his waist. "Stay a little longer," she said. "It's our first morning together as a family. Let the tracks wait." He smiled, slow and real, and kissed her. They sat together on the cot, the children still asleep, the fire casting soft light across the room. Outside, the world was cold and sharp. But inside, love had taken root, quiet, lasting, and unquestioned. Years passed. Jesse grew tall and solemn, his hands calloused from fence work. June learned to read by the hearth, tracing the words with her finger as Gwen whispered the sounds. The cabin grew by 2 rooms, a pantry, and a loft. Malcolm built a second barn, and Gwen planted an herb patch by the kitchen window. They never left. They didn't need to, because the prairie, with its wind and sky and silence, had given them not just shelter, but a life. One built slow, with care and without hurry. One that didn't erase the past, but softened it. And in the quiet of that land, where the world once felt like it had ended, they found that it was only just beginning.